Now I invite our chief guest, Professor K. VijayRaghavan, to deliver his convocation address to the students and all of us. Professor VijayRaghavan.
Recently graduated students, their families, faculty members, my colleagues on the dais, the chairman of the board of governors and directors and the deans. It's a very great honor to be here, although I must say that the last thing you want to hear after all the ceremonies is a long speech. And I assure you that's the last thing you'll hear, because we'll be done after this. As I came up to the stage, I was rather worried that I'd picked up Mr. Pankaj Patel's speech instead of mine, but fortunately that's not the case. What I wanted to convey to you today can actually be said in one sentence, though I'll take a little longer. And that one sentence is that no matter what everyone or anyone tells you what is good or what is bad, be skeptical about everything you hear. And that's sufficient. If you manage to do that, if you're critical, then all will be well. As a scientist, but as an individual, that's very important. But the other longer message I wanted to convey is no matter how rich or poor or whatever background each of us here in this room come from, we actually belong to an extraordinary, lucky elite. The mere fact that we are able to study in a place like this, or have parents who have managed with great difficulty to get us and support us in a place like this, puts us in the category of the elite in this country. That actually is a sad reflection in this country, about our country, that such an education is not available to many, many more. And having this available to you means that it brings upon a great responsibility. So the opportunities for liberation through education are something which we often see through television. No matter how poor our families are, we see the lives other people lead, we see the successes people have through education, and we would like our families, our children also to use education to get this success. But those opportunities are actually open to a few. So it's not that people don't know or don't want their children to be educated. Quite simply, it is very, very difficult for them to be able to do so. So our education, therefore, in places such as this, opens up extraordinary opportunities for us, but also puts great responsibilities on us. So the consequences of your success here is that you'll soon be in a position of power. In 20 years from now, you would have gone through your careers, you'd have risen to the top of your careers, and you'll have to take important decisions. For example, you'll have to decide in a complicated situation whether to build a big road or a highway or not. What do? It's very difficult to actually take that decision because there's land, people are living in those kinds of routes. The highway may help very many people, but building it will cause problems for others. What kind of a decision do you take? Now there are two routes you can take. You can say, well, this is very complicated, this is the plus, this is the minus. Overall, I think this is a good thing to do or not a good thing to do, and you can take a decision. Or you can take the easy way out and you can postpone taking the decision. Because you're well-to-do, because you have no problem, whether there's a road in one place or not doesn't affect you, it affects others. And therefore, being privileged, you can actually get away with indecision. And that's the serious trouble which we have in India today. And this goes not only for roads, but for all sorts of things. Let's say you become a plant biologist. Today, there's a lot of controversy about what kind of role science and technology has in agriculture. There are different kinds of views, those which say that technology is extraordinarily valuable for food security, for yield, for nutrition, and so on and so forth. And others say that we must go to a certain kind of farming, which does not have fertilizers, no pesticides, no genetic modification, and so on. Now, as scientists, you have to weigh the evidence. You can decide, is this more correct or that more correct? What are the complexities? And it's never very easy. and you have to convince society what's the right thing to do, and you have to take society along. So that's a very difficult challenge and something very difficult for you to do. You could actually, when you're in these committees, you could work hard and you could take a decision, be polite and firm and convey people what your decision is, or you can just, pass the buck to the next incumbent. There's no skin off your back. The food on your table doesn't come from whether you take this decision or not. It doesn't matter to you. So you are privileged. All of this is just a mere debate for you. So you can continue to be rich, you can continue to be happy. But it affects the lives of many people, no matter which way you take your decision. Let's say you become a vaccinologist, and you become a very eminent vaccinologist, and you are an expert on the consequences of vaccines in preventing disease. You know, let's say, when you're on a committee, that hundreds of thousands of lives can be saved by introducing an effective vaccine. But you also know that if you vaccinate a few million people, a small handful of them will have side effects. Which is more important, saving 100,000 lives or dealing with the side effects of a small handful when you vaccinate millions? It's a complicated decision. It's not easy. So you can actually think it through, take the decision, convince people what is right or wrong, or you can say, well, supposing I take a decision that the vaccine is good, and supposing 5 years later, after all these vaccines, someone has a serious side effect, they will say, so-and-so was the chairman of the committee which approved this vaccine, hang that person, that person was wrong, this was the wrong decision, and so on. Why take that risk? Better to postpone the decision, leave it to the next committee, to the next person. It doesn't affect you at all because your children can buy the vaccine. It's a national immunization program which will not start, and the vaccine will not be available to poor people. But that doesn't affect you. It's just a debate for you. So you can also postpone a decision on those kinds of things. Even apart from more applied aspects, very basic aspects of our lives, we have to take such decisions. Supposing you are a mathematician graduating from IISER Kolkata. You go on, you do your PhD, you prove an important theorem, you become very famous, you're an excellent teacher, you come back and teach here. Now you can carry on this way. But if you're called upon now to serve a committee and to deal with mathematics education in the country and help transform mathematics over here, you can say, well, that's not my job, that's someone else's job. Forget it, I'm not particularly interested in that. There's nothing happens to you, nothing happens to your children. They can go to the best schools and they can go to the best colleges. It's others who will not have this opportunity of your talent. So again, this kind of a situation is no skin off your back. Again, it can be just a debate for you. So it's important to keep in mind that coming to such places and doing well there's nothing wrong in it. Being privileged is not a crime. Being poor is not a virtue. But being privileged in a subsidized education, in a country such as ours, and not even being a modest participant in transforming our society is gross negligence, to say the least, right? Not only do we, the elite, not participate enough in change, but we have no problem in being critical of others. Each component of our chain, when we want to do something from beginning to end, each component is very, very competent. There are good mathematicians, there are good teachers, there are good, places for research and so on and so forth. But the interaction between all of this to result in a societal transformation is rather poor. So every link in the chain in this situation becomes the weakest link. Each of our surroundings therefore performs suboptimally, and we refuse to set this right. Yet we rant at exactly similar incompetence in others. When someone else does something bad, we yell and shout at them and say how bad they are. But we never look at ourselves and see how we can change a bit. So how do we get out of this? It's enough to keep saying what the problem is. We need a solution. Now, being a participant in change is not a huge and onerous responsibility I may have mistakenly conveyed. It's not that you have to be sad and long-faced and take the burden of changing the country. You don't have to do that. You can be relaxed and joyful and carry on with what you do and yet be responsible. It simply means doing the right thing in small matters as well as in big ones. It simply means having the skin in the game even when you do not need to. It means getting this correct around ourselves in our workplace. And very helpfully, this can happen by looking around at similar workplaces elsewhere. Look around the world, see plant biologists, vaccinologists, mathematicians who have done the right thing in very difficult contexts. We can learn from them. We actually admire them. Whenever we see them in the newspapers, we say how fantastic they are. But we can actually also be like them. So today, when you leave these protective environs, all doors will open to you and you will be assured a good and comfortable life. That's very good. Enjoy it. You have worked hard for this and all credit to you. But you've also graduated from the elite to the super elite. The world is your oyster. When you become rich and famous, take care to shun hubris. Remember that a poor country has supported you generously. Most importantly, remember that only the rich have the luxury of living with inaction. When you are in a position where your decisions matter, do not neglect to take the correct one for all of us. Just as you have benefited from the correct decisions of others, people who took the decisions to create the ISIS, for example, needn't have done that. They could have sat in a committee and complained about the state of the world. But they did that. As a result of that, we have five extraordinary institutions where people such as you have got huge opportunities, right? We need more such institutions, we need more such people, and then we need to feed back into our society to truly transform it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.